Thank all of you for joining us this morning. Once again, I'll be speaking from the book of Philippians, chapter 1. And guys, this has been amazing to just meditate in the same book. Really, I've been meditating in the same chapter for quite some time. And how it all comes together. And it gives you a new appreciation for what God has to say through His Word. This morning I'm beginning in chapter 1, beginning in verse 18. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed. And in that I rejoice. Yes, I will rejoice. To understand a little bit more about what he's talking about there, I mentioned it a little in last week. Paul was talking about his being in prison and how that has gone in a great way to advance the gospel. But he's talked about also because of his imprisonment, many men were made bold in their proclamation of the gospel. But what you notice what he says here, that only in every way, whether in pretense or in truth. Now I don't totally understand this. But when he says in pretense, there were some guys preaching for the wrong reasons. The easiest way to put it. They're preaching the gospel for the wrong reasons, but some are actually preaching the gospel in love. They truly cared about the people they were giving the gospel to. But you notice he said, it doesn't matter to him whether they had the right motive or the wrong motive. What mattered to him was the gospel was being preached. And so it was being preached and he was rejoicing. Now imagine that. He's in prison. He's probably chained to 2 guards and he's rejoicing. You see, Paul looked past his circumstances and saw the providence of God. And that's what I was speaking about last week. Understanding His providence in your life and living there. So he says, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. For I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. He was confident in God. He was going to be delivered. But now I want you to notice what the deliverance may be. As it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by death or by life. You see where he's going with that deliverance? He may be delivered because God has taken him on to glory. Or he may be delivered by being released from prison. Either way, he's happy and he's rejoicing. And then he says, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me. When you read this and you meditate on it, you see that Paul's focus is always upward. It's not horizontal. He wasn't worried about the things going on. His whole focus was to magnify Christ. That's what it means when it says, for me to live is Christ. His whole life was devoted to Christ, the proclamation of His Word, giving Him honor and glory. Fellas, that's what our life is to be. At all times, no matter what season of life you're in, live it in such a way that you're living it vertical, not horizontal. We often live it horizontally, looking at our circumstances, wondering what I'm going to do in this circumstance. Begin to focus upward and live for Him. And then he says, And after he says, for me to live is Christ, he says, if I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor from me. Fruitful labor. Is your life being lived and manifesting that fruitful labor? And he's not speaking about being gainfully employed. He addressed that in another book where he says, don't be busybodies, but be busy at work. And goes on to say, if you don't work, you don't eat. But that's not the labor he's talking about. He's talking about fruitful labor in your witness for Christ. Every day of your life, make it intentional to look for ways to interact with people in such a way that you're magnifying Him. And it takes intentionality. It really does. And it gets to be easier to see those opportunities. But just remember, God is providentially in control. He knows exactly what you're capable of doing. He knows your level of understanding of His Word. And when He brings somebody into your life, it's Him that's bringing them into your life. He's the God of intersections. And when you understand that He's that God of intersections, then you can be intentional in finding ways to minister to whoever it is that you're with. At the same time, that person may be in your life because you need their ministry as well. So it could be a twofold purpose there. You benefiting them benefiting you. Either way, fruitful labor is what God is looking for from each one of us. That's the reason He told the apostles, all power has been given unto me, therefore go, make disciples. And we are disking disciples. On our webpage, it says we're passionate about disc golf. We're passionate about brotherly fellowship, and this is wonderful. But it says we're passionate about discipleship. If we're passionate about discipleship, we will have that fruitful labor. Now, let's go throw to the glory of God.